I lost my passport before the family trip and my parents said, "We don't care. The trip will be better without you." 3 days later, my sister sent me a photo of my passport. She had hidden it, so I changed the locks for when they returned. My name is Wilson. I am 32 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've carried the weight of my family on my shoulders. Don't get me wrong, I loved my family. Or at least that's what I repeated to myself every morning when the alarm went off at 5 o'clock am for my job as a civil engineer. But sometimes that love felt more like a suffocating obligation. I lived in a house that I had bought with my own hard work. Thanks to a loan I was still paying off. Living with me, there were my parents, Pedro and Marcella, both 58, and my younger sister, Alejandra, who is 25. The property was mine, though it seemed I was the only one who remembered that. I worked at a construction company, a job that demanded long hours, endless meetings, and precise calculations to prevent bridges, buildings, or roads from collapsing. It wasn't an easy job, but it was enough to cover the expenses, or rather to cover all the expenses. The mortgage, the electricity, the water, the internet that Alejandra used to film her TikTok videos, the food my mother insisted on buying from expensive brands, and even my father's whims, who from time to time wanted a good whiskey to relax. My parents claimed they were too old to work, even though at 58 they were in better health than many of my colleagues. And Alejandra, well, she was the family's favorite, the rising star, who according to my parents was going to become the next big influencer. I, on the other hand, was nothing more than the one who paid for absolutely everything. It wasn't always like this. When I was younger, my parents worked. My father was a mechanic and my mother helped out at a clothing store. But when I turned 28 and bought the house, something changed. They said they were exhausted, that they had worked enough, and that it was now my turn to pay them back for everything they had done for us. I'm grateful for what they did when we were little, but that gratitude turned into an eternal debt. And Alejandra had never worked a single day in her life. Ever since she finished high school, she decided her destiny was to become famous on social media. My parents supported her without question, convinced that it was the new trend and that she would soon become a millionaire with her videos. Meanwhile, I would get up every morning at 5, drive an hour to the construction company, and return home exhausted, only to be met with my sister's taunts. Alejandra had a special talent for driving me crazy. Every time she saw me walk in with my hard hat under my arm and my shirt soaked in sweat, she would let out some sarcastic comment. "Look, here comes the family slave," she'd say while recording a video on her phone, laughing as if she'd told the most brilliant joke in the world. My parents, instead of stopping her, would laugh with her. "Oh, Alejandra, the things you say," my mother would comment while peeling an apple in the kitchen. My father would just nod with a beer in his hand, looking at me as if I was the one who didn't get the joke. I swallowed my rage because what else could I do? They were my family, and this was my house. But with each passing day, that rage grew a little more inside me. Things got worse when Alejandra decided I was the perfect target for her social media pranks. At first, they were small things. She would film me while I was asleep on the couch after a long day or blast music to wake me up and capture my reaction. But then the pranks became crueler. One night, I came home exhausted after a 12-hour shift. All I wanted was to take a shower and sleep. I got into bed and suddenly felt an unbearable itching all over my body. I shot up, scratching myself like crazy while Alejandra appeared at the door with her phone, filming me and laughing her head off. "I put itching powder in your sheets, Wilson. Look at your face. This is going to go viral." My parents were in the living room and instead of scolding her, they laughed as if it were the funniest thing in the world. The next day, I saw the video on her TikTok with comments from strangers making fun of me. "Poor guy. It looks like his family hates him," someone wrote. He wasn't that far off. I tried to talk to my parents about it. I told them that Alejandra's pranks made me feel humiliated, that I worked too hard to come home and deal with that. But my mother just sighed and said, "Oh Wilson, don't be so sensitive. She's just a girl having fun. A girl. Alejandra is 25 years old." My father patted me on the shoulder and said, "Relax, man. Let your sister follow her dream." That dream apparently included making me the laughingstock for her followers. I was tired, but I didn't want to be the bad guy in the story. I thought about kicking them out of the house, telling them to leave and make their own way, but I couldn't. They were my family, and despite everything, I wanted to love them. So, I swallowed my rage once more and carried on. But deep down, something inside me was starting to break. One day, while checking my bank account, I had an idea. Maybe what we needed was a change of scenery, something that would bring us together as a family. I had saved a little extra money and thought a trip together could be the solution. I wanted us to be a real family again, like when we were kids and took trips to the countryside on weekends. So, I decided to plan a vacation. I looked up destinations, compared prices, and finally booked a trip to another country. It would be 7 days at an all-inclusive resort with a beach, a pool, and unlimited food. It was expensive, but I thought it would be worth it if I could get my family to see me in a different light. I paid for everything, the flights, the hotel, even the airport transfers. When I told my parents and Alejandra, their eyes lit up. My mother almost cried with excitement, saying she had never been to such a beautiful place. My father slapped me on the back and said, "Good job, son." For a moment, I felt good, as if I was finally doing something they valued. But then, as always, Alejandra had to open her mouth. "That's great, Wilson, but it would be better if it were just the three of us. You're a bit boring, aren't you?" She laughed and my parents laughed with her. I tried to take it as a joke, but her words stabbed me like a knife. I spent the next few weeks organizing everything. I confirmed the reservations, bought travel insurance, and made sure we all had our passports ready. I kept mine in a drawer in my desk along with my important documents. Every night before bed, I would mentally run through the to-do list. I wanted everything to be perfect. It was the night before the trip when everything unraveled. I got home late from work, exhausted but excited, ready to pack and finally take a break from the grind. I went straight to my desk, pulled open the drawer where my passport always stayed and froze. The spot was empty. I checked again, then again. Papers everywhere, hands shaking, heart pounding. I tore through every drawer, every shelf, every bag. Nothing. The passport was gone. I walked out to the living room. My parents were watching a soap opera, my father half asleep with a beer in hand. "Did either of you see my passport?" I asked. My mother didn't even look away from the screen. "I don't know, Wilson. You're always misplacing things," my father chuckled. "You're a mess, son." And then came Alejandra, leaning against the doorframe, phone in hand, smirking. "Oops. What a shame, Wilson. Did you lose your passport?" How clumsy. Something in her tone made my stomach drop. I wanted to believe it was just another one of her cruel jokes, but the unease wouldn't leave me. I searched until a.m., turning the house upside down. Nothing. By dawn, I was pacing, replaying every moment, wondering if I could get a replacement in time. I couldn't. The next morning, I told them, "I can't find my passport." "We'll have to cancel or postpone," my father burst out laughing. "We're not staying here because of you, son. The tickets are bought." My mother adjusted her sunglasses like she was already on vacation. "Besides, the trip will be better without you. You're always so serious." Alejandra laughed openly. "Yeah, you'd ruin the vibe. Don't worry. I'll post enough videos for you to feel like you're there." I stared at them, my family waiting for someone to take it back. No one did. They packed their bags, called a taxi, and left without another word. I stood in the doorway as they drove off, laughter echoing from the car. I sat on the couch for hours, hands still trembling, trying to convince myself it was just bad luck, that they hadn't meant it, that I had simply lost my passport. But 3 days later, everything shattered. I woke to a notification on my phone, Alejandra's new TikTok. I clicked it. There she was on the beach, sunlight and turquoise water behind her, laughing into the camera. "Guys, I pulled off the prank of the century. Look." She held up my passport. I hid my brother's passport so he couldn't come on the trip, and it worked. Now we're here enjoying ourselves without him. Isn't that great? The video ended with her laughter and a stupid dance. For a moment, I couldn't move. My vision blurred, pulse hammering in my ears. Then came the rage, hot, sharp, undeniable. I called my mother immediately. She answered with a lazy tone, the sound of waves in the background. "Wilson, what is it?" "We're busy enjoying ourselves." I told her about the video, about Alejandra. "You knew," I said. She sighed. "Oh, Wilson, don't exaggerate. It's just a prank. It's not that big of a deal." I hung up. Something inside me clicked. The last tether snapped. That was the exact moment I stopped being their son and became something else, someone done being humiliated. The moment I hung up, the house felt different, quieter, heavier, almost as if the walls themselves were waiting to see what I'd do next. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel conflicted. I just felt done. I stared at the frozen frame of Alexandra's stupid green on my phone, her hand waving my passport like a trophy, and something inside me settled. A clean break. A final line. I opened my laptop and looked up locksmiths. The first one that answered had a gravelly voice. The kind of voice that sounded like it had heard every excuse, every late-night emergency. "I need every lock in my house changed today," I said. "That urgent?" he asked. Yes. He arrived within the hour. An older man, wiry, efficient. He didn't ask questions, and I didn't offer explanations. I just stood in the hallway, arms crossed, listening to the click and grind of screws coming loose, as if each one was removing a piece of the life I'd been forced into. When he handed me the new keys, a weight slid off my shoulders. "Everything okay?" he asked, studying my face. I nodded. "Better than you think," once he left. I headed upstairs with a trash bag and an emptiness I didn't recognize, not numbness, not coldness, clarity. I walked into my parents' room first. The smell of my father's cologne, my mother's perfume bottles lined up like trophies, the closet packed with clothes I had paid for. I opened the drawers and began packing. Shirts, shoes, sentimental junk they'd refused to throw away. There was no anger in my movements, just a steady rhythm: fold, drop, zip, fold, drop, zip. Then I moved to Alexandra's room. Her world was chaos, clothes everywhere, lights set up around her bed, ring lights still warm, makeup scattered like debris after an explosion. Her laptop was open on her desk, paused on her own smiling face. I didn't touch it. I didn't need revenge. I only needed separation. I stuffed her clothes into bags, her makeup into a shoebox, her precious props into a trash bag. I found the empty case where she kept her second phone, the one she used for recording her content. For a second, I imagined smashing it. I had every reason to. But then I realized something. I didn't need destruction. I needed distance. When the packing was done, every room felt bigger, lighter, as if the house had finally exhaled. Over the next 4 days, I lived in silence. Peaceful silence. Silence without TikTok recordings, without lectures, without sarcastic comments thrown at me like rocks. I could breathe. I could think. I could exist. And then on Saturday afternoon, the taxi pulled up. I heard their voices first. Loud. Complaining. Bragging about the buffet. Alexandra giggling as she typed on her phone. My parents dragging their suitcases like they owned the place. I stood at the window and watched them walk up the front steps. Still glowing from their vacation. Still believing they were coming home to the same Wilson they had mocked and trained for years. My father put the key in the lock. Twisted. Stopped. He tried. Again. Harder. Nothing. "Pedro, what's wrong?" my mother asked. "The damn key won't turn." Alexandra rolled her eyes. "Move. Let me try." She jammed the key in and twisted aggressively. Nothing. Then the banging started. "Wilson," my father shouted. "Open the door, man." I sat on the couch, letting their voices echo through the house. They banged harder, then louder. My mother yelling my name. My father swearing. Alexandra shrieking that she was tired and hungry. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. 20. Letting them stew in confusion, frustration, helplessness, emotions I had swallowed for years. After 2 hours of pounding, yelling, and pleading, I finally stood up and walked to the door. I opened it. Their faces were priceless: shock, indignation, fear, confusion, all mashed together. "Wilson," my father snapped. "What the hell is going on?" "We've been outside for 2 hours," my mother cried. "Open the door, idiot," Alexandra yelled, mascara smudged. I just looked at them, calm, collected, and said the sentence that would change everything. "You don't live here anymore." They froze as if the words didn't register. My father's face twisted, first anger, disbelief, pride, all clashing at once. "What do you mean we don't live here anymore?" he barked. "Stop talking nonsense and move out of the way." I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I simply stepped aside and pointed to the pile of suitcases and bags stacked neatly in the entryway. "Your things are packed. Take them." My mother's jaw dropped. "Wilson, what is this? A joke? Stop this right now." Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from entitlement cracking for the first time in her life. Alexandra stared at the bags like they were a crime scene. "You're insane," she said, voice rising. "Open the door. We're exhausted." I didn't blink. "You hid my passport. You all left me behind on a trip I paid for. You laughed while you did it. I pointed toward the street. Now leave. My mother started crying immediately, the dramatic, sharp kind of crying people do when they're angry, not hurt. I can't believe you're doing this to us. We're your family. I stepped into the doorway, and I stopped being yours the moment you enjoyed watching me suffer. My father tried another tactic, the prideful, lecturing one. You're ungrateful, he snapped. We raised you. We fed you. We clothed you. I met his eyes. And I fed you, clothed you, housed you for the last 4 years. You've contributed nothing. And you let my sister sabotage me for entertainment. Alejandra exploded. You ruined everything. You could just laughed at the prank like a normal person. That word prank finally pushed everything into focus. To them, I wasn't a brother or son. I was material, living content, a utility, a financial reservoir. I walked back inside, grabbed the last bag, and dropped it on the doorstep. This house is mine, and so is my peace. Get out, my father tried pushing past me. I blocked the doorway with a steadiness I'd never shown them. Wilson, he growled. Move. No, the silence that followed was the loudest moment of my life. I closed the door, locked it, listened to the three of them yelling, begging, arguing with each other, alternating between threats and pity. Then, eventually, the voices faded. The taxi engine rumbled, and the street went silent inside the house. The quiet felt almost unreal, thick, clean. And finally mine, for the first time since I was a kid. I sat on my own couch, in my own home, and let myself breathe without permission. The next morning felt alien in its simplicity. No loud TV blasting at her and no Alejandra stomping around rehearsing a TikTok dance. No bickering. No guilt tripping. No tension coiling under my skin the moment I opened my eyes. Just quiet. I made my coffee, not the overpriced brand my mother insisted on. I sat at the kitchen table and drank it slowly, realizing it was the first peaceful morning in years. By noon, I decided to clean the house, not out of spite or symbolism, just because I finally wanted to. Every room I walked into felt bigger, as if removing them had freed the walls too. Alejandra's room, once a neon-lit war zone of makeup spills and tangled ring light cords, was now empty. My parents' room, once stuffed with things I had paid for, echoed faintly when I stepped inside. That afternoon, I took all their packed bags, neatly labeled, and set them in the garage, just in case they tried accusing me of throwing anything away. I even photographed the piles for proof. No rage, no chaos, just order. 4 days passed this way. 4 perfectly quiet days in a house that finally belonged to me. And on the 5th day, without warning, the peace cracked. IT started when my phone buzzed. A message from a friend. Jude, have you seen Alejandra's new TikTok? I opened the link. There she was, sitting on a cheap hotel bed somewhere, eyes red, face blotched. She looked furious and devastated at the same time, an unsettling combination I'd only ever seen in toddlers and influencers behind her. My parents sat stiffly, glaring at the camera like it owed them money. Alejandra sniffled dramatically and looked into the lens. So, guys, deep breath. My brother kicked us out of the house, like literally threw us into the street. We came back from vacation, and he changed the locks. My father leaned into the frame and added, he betrayed his own family. My mother dabbed her eyes with a tissue. We're homeless now. We have nowhere to go. A beat. Alejandra turned on the tears, voice wobbling. If anyone knows a place for rent, please DM me. The comment section was already full of strangers calling me a monster. A few even offered to send money to help them. And then came the part that made my blood boil. A pinned comment from my sister. He ruined our trip. He ruined our lives. And all because he's jealous of me going viral. I stared at the screen and felt a slow, cold realization spread through me. They weren't ashamed. They weren't sorry. They weren't even confused. They were using me again. This time not for my money, but for views. That was the moment I knew the situation wasn't over. The trip, the passport, the locks, those were only the beginning. I had cut them off financially. Now they were coming for my reputation, and I was about to learn that when a family like mine loses access to you, they don't disappear. They adapt. The video spread faster than I expected. By the next morning, my inbox was full, mostly strangers calling me a monster, a horrible son, a jealous loser. People who knew nothing about me suddenly felt entitled to judge me based on Alejandra's teary performance. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was calculating. I spent the day quietly gathering evidence, screenshots of old messages, videos Alejandra had made at my expense, receipts for every bill I had paid for years. I archived everything like a man preparing for a war. He didn't start but intended to finish. By evening, the situation escalated. My boss called. Wilson, everything all right at home? Apparently someone from my parents' circle sent him the video, claiming I had abandoned my family. I explained what happened in 3 sentences. He sighed. Handle your personal life, Wilson. Don't let them drag you down. I thanked him. But the warning was clear. This wasn't just drama anymore, it was reaching my livelihood. That night, as I sat at my kitchen table reviewing spreadsheets for work, my phone began to buzz again. But this time, the messages were different. They were from relatives. My Aunt Rosa. Wilson, how could you? Your mother is crying nonstop. My uncle. You should be ashamed. Family comes first. My grandmother's sister. Son, apologize to your parents. They're suffering. And then my father's message. Short, cold, familiar. Fix this, now. I stared at the screen, stunned by how predictable they were. Not a single one asked what happened. Not one asked how I felt. They all assumed I was the villain, because that was the role I had always been assigned, the one who could take the blame, absorb the hurt, sacrifice himself for the family. Something deep inside me hardened. At midnight, I opened Alejandra's TikTok again. She had posted a second video. This one was worse. She was crying harder, her makeup smeared on purpose for the aesthetic. My brother is unstable, she said. He got violent when we told him he needed therapy. My father added, we're scared of him. My mother whispered, I don't know who he is anymore. All lies, all rehearsed. My hands tightened around my phone. They weren't just smearing my reputation. They were setting up a narrative, one where I was dangerous, unhinged, mentally unstable, a narrative that could grow teeth. A narrative that could cost me my job, my friends, my future. And then I saw a small detail in the corner of the screen behind them. The cheap hotel room had a printed address on the emergency exit map stuck to the door. They were close, very close. A 20-minute drive from my house. I sat back, heart steady, mind clearer than it had been in years. I knew exactly what they wanted. Guilt, fear, attention, money, power over me. But I also knew something they didn't. The moment you push the quiet one too far, the moment you publicly humiliate the person who kept your life afloat, you create someone who doesn't need you anymore. And someone who doesn't need you is someone you can no longer control. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and turned off the lights. It was time to end their performance. On my terms, I drove to the address I'd seen in the corner of Alejandra's video, an old budget hotel tucked behind a gas station. A place so cheap it practically vibrated with fluorescent lighting and disappointment. Fitting, really. I didn't go inside. I didn't need a confrontation, a shouting match, or a dramatic scene in a hotel corridor. I had no interest in feeding the chaos they thrived on. Instead, I walked to the front desk. The clerk, a tired-looking man scrolling on his phone, barely glanced out. Room number? He asked. I handed him a neatly printed envelope. This is for the family into 118. Just slide it under their door. He nodded, uninterested, and took the envelope. Inside that envelope was everything. Screenshots of Alejandra's videos where she bragged about pranking me, her messages laughing about using Wilson for content. Copies of receipts proving I paid for every expense for years, a list of every bill in my name. A printout of the airline tickets showing I paid for the trip, a copy of the locksmith invoice. A letter written in the calmest tone I've ever used. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't emotional. It was factual. Brutally factual. The letter read, I am done. You are not welcome in my home. You are not entitled to my money, my space, or my reputation. You lied publicly. I am correcting it privately once. If you continue harassing me, I will pursue legal action. Any further contact must go through a lawyer. Wilson. No threats. No insults. Just truth and consequences. I left the hotel, drove home, and slept like a man who had finally cut the last thread tethering him to people who never valued him. The next morning, everything exploded, but silently. At 6:14 a.m., my phone buzzed nonstop. 20 missed calls from my mother, 11 from my father, a flood of messages from Alejandra. Wilson, please answer. You didn't have to go that far. We didn't know you kept all that stuff. Why did you show Dad the receipts? Please call me. Then came the guilt. We're your family. We need you. We can fix this. Then the threats. We can post more videos if you don't talk to us. You're making a mistake. Then the begging. Just help us for a few months until we get back on our feet. Please don't abandon us. I didn't answer. I blocked all 3 numbers. By noon, the videos were gone from Alejandra's TikTok. Every one of them. Deleted. She posted a vague apology video instead. I am taking a break from social media to focus on myself. Translation. She realized her followers had stumbled onto the screenshots I included in the envelope. People weren't calling me a monster anymore. They were calling her a liar, a manipulator, a spoiled bully. By evening, a relative called me not to judge, but to ask, sheepishly, is everything Alejandra posted fake? Yes, I said, and hung up. That night, I stood in my quiet kitchen, making dinner for one, and heard something I hadn't heard in years. Silence that didn't hurt. Silence that didn't feel like loneliness. Silence that felt like freedom. But I knew something else to families like mine don't let go easily. They weren't finished. Not by a long shot. 2 weeks passed. 2 gloriously quiet, peaceful adult weeks in a house that finally belonged to me, and only me taught in no footsteps stomping down the hallway. No sarcastic comments thrown like knives. No TikTok lights blinding me when I walked through a door. Just work, silence, meals when I wanted them, sleep when I needed it. Freedom had a sound. Nothing at all. But freedom also attracts the noise you cut out. The first sign they weren't done came in the form of a familiar envelope taped to my door. No return address. Just my name in my mother's handwriting, the same handwriting she used on all my childhood scoldings. I didn't open it. I tossed it onto the counter and let it sit there for days. I wasn't ready. Not because I feared the contents, but because I knew exactly what would be inside. Manipulation wrapped in sentiment. Guilt dressed as love. And when I finally opened it days later, I was right. The letter was a masterpiece of emotional acrobatics. It started with pity. We have nowhere to go. Then guilt. You're leaving your parents to suffer. Then shame. You've changed. Money ruined your heart. Then anger. You betrayed us. Then begging. Just let us come home for a little while. And finally, the familiar threat. If we end up on the streets, it'll be your fault. I set the letter down calmly. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't feel a single tug of guilt. Because the truth was simple. They weren't on the streets. They were living in a modest apartment my sister hated. But it was safe, stable, and paid for by themselves. For the first time in their lives, my mother wasn't suffering. She was adjusting. My father wasn't abandoned. He was finally responsible for his own bills. Alejandra wasn't crying. She was learning what humility tasted like, and I wasn't the villain. I was the escapee. A week after the letter, a mutual friend sent me a message. Hey, I saw your parents at the mechanic shop. Your dad looks tired, but different, calmer, working. Later that same week, someone else wrote, Alejandra is working in retail. She doesn't post much anymore. She just works. For the first time in my life, the world wasn't on my shoulders. It was on theirs, where it always should have been. One evening, after a long day at the construction site, I came home, made myself dinner, opened the windows, and let the breeze fill the house, and I realized something. I didn't miss them. Not even a little. Not the noise. Not the guilt. Not the weight. Not the version of myself I had to be around them. The quiet wasn't loneliness. The quiet was mine. A life built without being drained, marked, or used. A life where help was a choice, not an obligation. A life where love wasn't a leash. A life where family wasn't a trap. People always say family is forever. But they never mention the truth hidden behind it. Forever is only a blessing when you're loved. Not exploited. Daughters. Oh no, I don't regret changing the locks. I don't regret the silence. And I don't regret choosing myself. In fact, it was the best decision I ever made. Because sometimes walking away isn't abandoning a family, it's escaping one.